Hello everyone, today we will talk about all the functions of the ADO Bike S866 onboard computer. The computer is the same for all models, so we will examine all the available settings and see that the only difference between the various bike models is the wheel diameter. To enter the settings menu, what everyone calls the secret made and cool menu, you just need to press more and less keys at the same time. So you move around the various parameters. With the on-off button, the parameters are 20, so we can go and see them one by one and change them as we like. Within the limits of the bike, of course. Certain parameters should not be touched because you risk damaging the computer, controller, or even the battery. Before you go to make your changes, I recommend you make a video with all the basic settings that are on your computer, so you can go back in case you mess up some. Once you turn on the computer, as already said, just press the buttons. We're more or less going into the settings menu. The first P01 setting is the setting of the backlight level. By acting on the keys more and less, we can go to change the brightness of the display. This is something you will see right away by changing the effect that it has by moving us over P02. From here we can set the unit of measure of the odometer in miles or kilometers. P03 if it goes to set the battery voltage. This can be set to 36, which is the default value precisely because the bike has a 36-volt battery. It can be set to 48, 60 or 24. Obviously it is best to leave it at the base value, that is 36, so as not to damage the controller or battery. When you change this value, the only difference you will see right away is the percentage of battery left. Indeed. And this percentage is calculated on the voltage of the battery, so if normally the battery is half, if we bring it to 48 it is even more discharged, so the values will be staggered and it is not good to go to change. We then go to the parameter P04 and the shutdown timer. This indicates that in 10 minutes of idleness the computer shuts down. This helps to manage the battery and save more charges. It is useless to leave it on for an hour if you do not use it. You can set even lower values. P05 is the setting of the values of assistance. That is, if we do not let them set them from scratch, we see 3 levels of assistance. If we set it to 1 and exit the menu, we see that we have not 3 but 5 levels of assistance. If we bring it to 2, we go out of the menu, we see that we have 9 levels of assistance, but in fact these 9 levels are not so different between them. And by the way, however, only level 1 is assistance on the assisted pedal. The others are only speed limits on the effect that has the accelerator, so they are values that divided by 9 does not make any sense to use. So I suggest you leave it to 3 because you will end up using either the pedal assist or the full throttle, so it wouldn't make sense to go set 9 different levels. Let's go to parameter P06. P06 indicates the diameter of the wheel. In this case it is an ADO at 16, so the diameter is 16 in. To change the diameter of the wheel means to go to stagger. To adjust the maximum speed that follows the bike computer. In fact, the odometer is based on the rolling quantities of the wheel. Knowing the diameter, the computer calculates the speed by making the wrong diameter. The speed is obviously wrong, and of course we can only change it if we think the odometer is not working well, maybe comparing it to GPS data. So let's go to the parameter P07. Normally this parameter indicates the number of magnets of the motor, but on BICI Auto the default value is not used because this is a whole sensor motor and the number of magnets is not used, so it is best not to touch this value before you go to do some damage on the controller. The value P08 we have already seen in the various reviews of the car bikes. This is the speed limit that can be set for a standard bicycle. We have 25 kilometer age, which is the legal limit to drive on public roads. But if we have the option to drive on private roads or on private land, we can set the highest value and then take full advantage of the power of the bicycle. The maximum value is 100, but already higher than 40. However, we can make full use of the power of the bicycle. The p-value 0.9 we get right there. This is set to 1 or 0. This regulates the zero start. That is the possibility of the bike starting immediately with the accelerator. Or to power the accelerator, we have to get to a certain speed by pedaling. So, as is the case with many scooters, so it's your choice on how you like to ride around by bike. I honestly leave it on, so if I accelerate the bike, part P10 should go to set the driving mode, but in fact it doesn't change anything. So this is one of those values that you should not touch. P011, 7. The higher the sensitivity for the assisted Petrata system, the later the engine will start. Means that the higher this value is, the later it is to start the engine. Consequently, you have to work harder before you can get the engine thrust of the bike. To get an immediate thrust, just set a lower value. The P12 is the acceleration power is set in values from 10 to 5, the lowest value 0. The accelerator is basically disabled because in fact 0 acceleration, the accelerator does not work. From 5 acceleration, that it's extreme is all the power right at the wheel. An average value, which is also the one that comes out of the factory set, is the value 3. If you do not want to use much more battery than necessary, you should leave an intermediate value because rightly the more the acceleration, the more the battery consumption. Let's go to the other value. P13 is the assist sensor setting and this should not be changed. P14 indicates the operating ampere of the controller. This also does not need to be changed because otherwise we risk burning the controller or damaging the battery. P15 is the battery discharge limit. That is the minimum voltage for which the battery must go to rest. So if we go down using the bike below 29 volts, in this case the bike goes off because it tells us that it has reached the minimum charge. We can lower this color, but this will cause too much discharge of the bicycle. So it is not advisable to change it downward. At the limit we can change it up, so the discharge alarm will be higher to better preserve the battery. The P16 instead is used to reset the odometer, so we can go reset the odometer. P17 set the IL cruise control. Practically the cruise control comes into play after a tot of time that you use the throttle at constant speed. The bike keeps it on automatically even if you leave the accelerator. It is disabled when you then touch the brakes or the accelerator again. I have tried it several times, but it doesn't always work, so I advise you not to touch it. So the value 18 is 1:1 ratio of the actual speed to the speed marked by the odometer. If we leave it at 100 and the bike will measure the correct speed, if we take it to 200 for example, the odometer will measure twice the actual speed. This is a value that should not be touched because it makes no sense to go and modify it, because anyway the bike would be stalled and would not indicate the correct speed. P19 is the setting for the assisted mode. Setting it to 0, we will have assistance, the 0 assistance visible on the display. Now I'm going to show you why. Maybe it's easier to see than to put it into words. P19, let's set it to 0, let's go out, let's turn it off for a moment. So in this way there is 0 assistance, the bike is on, but the engine is not active. We display it if we set P19 to 1 for example. One moment we get there, we no longer have 0 assistance. Let's see. We have 123, but we can't go back to 0. If you 0 never use it, you can set it this way, otherwise you leave it as default. The last value, that is still a value that does not need to be changed. the P20, which is practically the setting for the communication system between computer and controller. This should not be modified or the bike will no longer work. This was the overview on all the values of the computer of the car bikes. Any 500 watt and 350 watt bike uses the same type of computer, so it's good for any bike. I hope I've been helpful. Like if you liked the explanation, and we will look back at the next review.